Well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this afternoon's webinar, 2020 Vision, the Transformation of Recruitment. My name is Scott McRae, I'm co-founder of Candidate ID, and I'm delighted to be joined today by two industry specialists, Steve Ward and Eitan Hilton, who are going to share their 2020 vision for recruitment and the changes that organizations will need to make to adapt to the new candidates' decision-making journey. But first, some housekeeping. So the presentation is going to last for about 40 minutes and then will be followed by questions and answers. So please post all questions in the questions box on the control panel, and I've also, when we get to that point, we'll put on the screen here both Eitan and Steve's contact details so that you can follow up directly with them as appropriate. You can also post questions on Twitter on the hashtag Candidate ID. Okay, so 2020 vision for recruitment. So candidates today are changing the way that they research and evaluate potential employers. You know, the explosion of digital channels and employer visibility, coupled with the emergence of increasingly discerning, well-informed candidates, means that a more sophisticated approach is required to help recruitment teams succeed in what is only going to become an increasingly competitive marketplace. So Steve is going to look at the innovations that have helped build inbound talent flow over the past decade, and he's going to look at what he thinks talent pipeline is going to look at in 2020. Steve's been recruiting for more than 20 years and he's generally regarded as one of the finest practicing social recruiters. He's recognized globally for his practical innovations in building inbound talent flow over the past 10 years, where in the most part he ran a social recruitment agency. He's now consulting as a talent attraction strategist for businesses who wish to be magnets to the talent that they desire. Eitan's then going to look at the evolution of recruitment and the future impact of big data, technology, and social media. Eitan is a talent acquisition professional with more than a decade's experience in global organizations across multiple sectors: construction, engineering, financial services, analytics, and most recently government. His core expertise includes talent acquisition strategy development and implementation across multiple geographies, as well as digital and social media strategies that underpin employer brand and diversity inclusion objectives. So what I'd like now to do is to hand over to Steve, who's going to take us through inbound talent flow and changes.
Hello everyone, I hope you can, is my screen visible, Colin? Scott? Oh yeah.
Yeah, you just share it now.
Yeah, there we go.
Yep, good. I can see it, thank you.
Technology, fabulous. Okay everybody, so my name is Steve Ward. As Scott has mentioned, I work these days as a talent attraction specialist. I help organizations attract the kind of talent they believe they want to hire to progress the organization in the way that they want to progress them. My observation on this, to kind of kick off really, is that recruitment for years has always been an excruciatingly outbound exercise. It is sorry, I'm just having a technology issue. Yeah, I'm back. Yeah, so we measure the success and failure of recruitment professionals based on factors that are built around what we do outbound and how we approach candidates on an outbound basis. But very rarely do we consider about the success levels of the inbound process. And I believe that it should be less about the stuff that we purely do outbound, but we need to be thinking about what we do inbound. Because typically this is the outbound exercise. This is a typical recruitment exercise that we're all very familiar with. Department has an empty desk, in comes a job requisition, there's a panic exercise to this whole thing because now they need somebody to fill a desk. Typically, still we advertise. First thing we do is advertise third party, get out there, find job seekers, bitch about the quality of the applicants that we get, because typically we're dealing with people who need a job there and then rather than the aspirational talent that we want to find. We take the best ones that we can get and we hire them and we put them in a job and we repeat and we repeat and we repeat this exercise. And the time constraints and the pressures of work, load, etc. mean that this pattern is repeated again and again and again. And it serves to fill jobs. And it serves to meet the needs of empty desks. But it doesn't serve to align with, one, business growth and business strategy in the way that we should be growing our business, and two, it doesn't align with thinking about how we're attracting the kind of people that will make a genuine difference in our organization. And this is a kind of a rod that our back is kind of chained to at the moment because of the way that we fill jobs, and has been for years. And it's been our typical way of doing things. And as I show there, the sort of hamster wheel effect, it's what happens. We go round and round and round doing the same kind of thing. So what if recruitment was more inbound? The phrase I always use, because I think it's very effective here, is about being magnetic. How does an organization become more magnetic to the people that we want to hire, the people that we believe will make a positive impact on our business, that we do believe, that we think are the best in the marketplace or the best available talents out there? So what if we looked at it more from the inbound angle? Because we'll talk a lot these days about how hiring, as Scott has already alluded to, the candidate journey is different now. The data out there and the review data out there is such that the candidate makes informed decisions as to why they want to join companies. Well, the smart ones certainly do. And so actually what we've got to look at is the typical kind of marketing funnel that is used to raise awareness of a brand or a product, to a wider audience in order to draw in interest and draw in a kind of a degree of association with that brand, should be exactly the same in the candidate funnel, because we can't rely purely on the people who respond to our adverts. They are people who need a job now, and sometimes it takes time to find the right people. So the marketing funnel is very similar to the talent acquisition funnel. This is an example. The image on here is an example of one of those sort of marketing funnels where the parallel kind of exists. I don't like the phrase leads on the right hand side. I think that should also be consideration and communication. But maybe the future of recruitment is inbound in the same way that consumer marketing is inbound as well. Less about shouting outwards, but more about attracting inwards. So what about something that looks something like this, around considering what the business strategy is, then aligning that with a people strategy, then thinking about our technology. What's very, very visible, and a lot of companies I talk to will talk about their natural first step, is the one that I mentioned earlier. You get a job and you go out and you advertise. In fact, I even talked to a company yesterday who said that they have to post their job. From the point of requisition and request, they must post their job on X amount of job boards inside 48 hours as part of their company KPIs as to how recruitment performance. But actually then what that doesn't do is then consider the people who are already in the ATS or CRM. Those people never come into consideration, so we tend to have this kind of static pool of people. So consider what's in our ATS and CTRM already, because for some reason we put them in there to start with, either because they applied for a job or we sourced them. Then think about that being a pipeline, then segment that pipeline and produce content. Draw interest, engage fans, develop content, approach the warm people, hire people who are warm to our business and put them in a job. And to me, that implies a degree of success, because we're drawing it down, as the symbol talks on the right hand side, it's driven towards spearfishing the people that we absolutely need for our business, who absolutely care about our business. So that's the model on the left hand side. To me is a more sensible kind of approach. But there's one key little word that I mentioned, that beyond the pipeline, which is the purpose of this little talk, but there's another big phrase I put in there, which was, I said the word fans. And this is something I talk about quite a lot, is about how do we consider who we hire when we consider who our aspirational hires are. And I will say, well, let's look for the fans in your business. And most businesses will say, who are our fans? I mean, I worked with a B2B organization last year that said, why on earth would anybody be fans of our organization? We're an organization that not many people have ever heard of, doing very dry B2B tech content marketing. But actually you have, each organization has fans already. And those can be found typically online. People who follow our pages, email subscribers, people who interact with our content and share our content, social mentions, inquisitors, people who inquire about our business, people of common interest, advocates, employees, friends, collaborators, third parties, vendors, and hey, look, why not customers? I know it's a thing that's got from kind of the idea always talks about shouldn't we consider that customers are the same as talent? And these people are already, without us even doing anything in regards to a campaign or a marketing campaign or a recruitment campaign, these people are already showing an interest in our business for whatever reason. And therefore, to a degree, simplistic phrase, but these people are fans of our organization. These people who kind of already have an interest and care in our business. And my recruitment methodology says, why don't we look at these people as a starting point as to how do we attract the people who are in our organization to our organization? Because the attributes of fans are such, hopefully they don't all look like that, but the attributes of fans are, they're people who believe and love your product, service, company, culture, people, purpose, or values. We don't really think that when we produce employer branding content or we produce content to talk about our organization or our products, we don't really think about these people being fans of our organization, because it's a phrase we don't really associate with recruitment as such. But actually these people, the fans are the people who really believe in what you do, are already an advocate of what you do, or the people who do what you do, or indeed what you stand for as an organization. So, but that means their characteristic is such that they're more likely to work to a common goal, not just a personal agenda, and already an advocate. Imagine employing people who are already an advocate of your organization before you approach them. They come into the business skipping and leaping that they're working for your organization. They're an advocate from day one, but they don't think about their personal agenda first. They contribute also to the company agenda because they care. These aren't people who are doing a job just because they need a job and the bills need to be paid. And other attributes of fans are they'll stand up for you in battle. They'll back you through the tough times, and they're resilient and graft for success for you. They genuinely believe in what you do. These are solution providing people who care about coming out the other side with a positive outlook. So identifying and attracting the individuals who care about your organization so much as to want to work for your organization in a way that says they're an advocate from day one is going to improve the performance level, the collaboration capability, and the performance across the business, and it's going to improve the retention of the people within your organization. So to me, this makes sense. Looking at the people who kind of already have an engagement with your business, even if they're not necessarily in your database or in your employer list. The talent pipeline to me, and the future talent pipeline to me, is not just about pooling groups of talent that happen to have a skill set that matches the things. That's part of it. That's the first stage of it. But the next bit to me then is also about building a fan base. It's about building a following of people who do care. How do we build a fan base? How do we do this kind of stuff? Well, we have to do it by providing content that inspires a captive audience. And how do we create a captive audience? Because what we want to do is inspire people to share what we produce, to tell the story about what we're about, and be inspired to back what we do and be part of what we do, whether we're hiring them or whether we're not hiring them. Because its pipeline is not it has a wider part of the funnel as well as a narrow part of the funnel in pipeline, and you need to be able to look after the people on the outside of the funnel as much as you need to be able to look at the people on the inside. But that means we've got to produce content that is interesting to these people, and that isn't just job-based content. That content is stuff that advisors, adds value to their professional existence, gets them to reconsider their thoughts, allows them to be on the pulse of what is new and ready, and technology and advancement in industry and all those sort of things. And so we need to be providing stuff that keeps them alive and intrigued by what we do. We've got to tell our stories as well. But the timing of that content matters as much as the need just to produce content. Because typically when we put out content around our organization and why that somebody would want to work for our organization, it's always to the same mass group of people. We send the same content to the same people, and it's all to do with what it's like to work within our organization. But actually people at the far end of the tunnel, of the funnel, not the tunnel, the funnel, actually don't really care to hear about what it's like to work inside our organization. The content that is out to those people is the content that develops them as professionals in what they do. It's industry knowledge, it's white papers, it's insight gathering stuff. So what we have to consider that when we produce content to drive attraction is a human being in that talent pipeline isn't always a candidate. There is a point where they're just a professional of the industry with a modicum of interest or limited interest within our organization. Put somebody we just found on LinkedIn and sourced for our business, but haven't really had any engagement with yet. So as we're drawing them in, we've got to understand where they are in that candidate pipeline funnel. Fan isn't always going to want to be an employee. So the next stage of this is never to consider that people will always want to work for our organization. Fans don't just work for us. Fans amplify what we do and are advocates of our business. So to produce the sort of content that makes people inspired by what we do, even if they're not really ready to be an employee of the organization because they're not at that stage of their career or existence yet, we still want them to act on our behalf. We still want them to be fans of our business. But also, but when they do, you need to be ready. And the thing about the timing of content and the right kind of content at the right point is making sure that at the point where they change their behavior to become closer to the business and understand and start to show signals that they are interested in the business and potentially hire ready, we need to be ready as well. But how? How do we do that? Because typically, as human beings and recruitment people in charge of a database or a candidate pipeline or pool, is we know the people in the pool, we know who does basic level engagement with the stuff that we do from a point of do they click our emails, do they engage with our content with a like or whatever online, but how do we know the next bit? Because at the moment what happens is we have this big pool and as recruitment people we're net fishing into that pool and trying to work and making lots of calls and emails to these people to kind of go, we may have a job for you, you're interested, you're looking for a job, but how do we make it narrow that down to the point that we're only making those calls to the people who are absolutely hire ready or showing a degree of interest in our business? And this is where technology and automation comes in, and it's ready. I mean, this isn't the future anymore. This is stuff that happens now. There is good time. I'm a technology cynic. For years, despite all my involvement with social media and the digital landscape in the evolution of recruitment over the last kind of 8-9 years that I've been involved with, technology to me has often been an obstacle rather than an addition to that process. And so I'm quite cynical about technology that arrives. But we're starting now to have technology that tells us, that genuinely does the thing that technology and automation should do. It should replace the things, it should automate the things that humans are not that good at in order to make the things that we are good at more effective. And this is where we stand now with candidate pipelining through content marketing. Talent pipelining and engagement isn't guesswork anymore. And obviously I'm here as an advocate of candidate ID, but with technology like this in place, we don't have to guess whether somebody is interested in our organization or not anymore. We can work out the people who are fans, who are close to our business, and who are the kind of people who are reading the content that is about careers and jobs and what it's like to work here, versus the people who are reading industry-related stuff and quite comfortable sitting reading industry-related stuff. We can tell the difference now, and that's exciting because it makes candidate pipelining a whole lot more interesting. To give you a little candidate ID image here, when we think about what kind of content, when we talk about how do we draw fans into our business and how do we draw people closer to our business, when I talk about putting content at the right stage of the process, then we have to consider which stage of that consumer journey they're at between awareness, education, consideration, and ultimate decision. And at the top of the funnel, when they're the wider part of the candidate pipeline, the kind of content we talk about, again, is the industry insights kind of stuff. It's that kind of stuff. And have a look at this stuff afterwards, after the talk. But as you work your way through the funnel, you shift gears in the kind of content you produce to make sure that you're tailoring content in line with the point in the candidate journey the consumer or candidate is. And this is how marketing works. This is how lead generation and marketing works, and has done for years, but technology and automation is making it better and better. But in recruitment, we're not very good at this. This is the bit that we're not so smart at. We grab everybody in the awareness funnel and kind of go, surely you're going to be interested in our company, and fire stuff out at them, hoping that they're going to bite our job-related content. And we miss out all the bits in the middle. We only have a top of funnel and a bottom of funnel, and we don't really understand the factors, or we measure the wrong factors through the funnel. So the journey between awareness and coming closer to the business, becoming a fan or being an employee, is built by the kind of interactions we have in the right channels at the right time. But automation of when people are reading this stuff at the right time in the right place helps us make those decisions. We couldn't do this humanly previously. Now and in the future we can, and that's exciting. So as a little summary of what I'm kind of covering here, think of talent pipelining as a fan building exercise. Get them excited. Talk about someone like Dave Hazelhurst at PH Creative will talk about goosebumps. Creating matters that make people kind of go, God, I like that company. I like what they've got to say. They're giving me something that's, and that's what builds fans. Fans are built by those goosebump moments, not by dry, non-existent, tepid stuff. Inspire talent with content and insights that make them a better professional, and things that teach them something that they don't know already, or things that they can contribute to. Shift gears as the magnetic effect takes place. As we start drawing them into the magnet, then shift the gears of how we treat those people through the process. Don't treat a candidate pipeline as one dimension of people. Automate the stuff that humans are bad at in order to better equip them for the things we're good at. So, and that's the point of tech to me. That's the point of tech. The tech is to make the stuff, is to make our journey as recruiters more efficient, not to add layers that shouldn't be in the process. And know the tipping point when identified talent pipeline becomes a candidate, somebody who genuinely is interested in our roles or genuinely interested in our organization, and be ready to act at that point. That's the killer thing about how great candidate pipelining is going to work, is making sure that we understand the difference between great talent and somebody who's genuinely engaged in our organization. But never, ever give up at the top of funnel. Never give up at the people who have very, very little day-to-day interactions with us. Keep providing them with insights and data and knowledge and content that inspires them to be better at their job. Because when they're ready, we need to be ready for them as well. So this process doesn't stop. It's evergreen. We have to keep feeding that funnel in order to ensure that we attract the people who are in consideration for our organization 2 years down the track as much as the ones who are in consideration in 2 weeks. So candidate pipeline is an ongoing exercise and needs the resources to be able to fulfill that. So that's where I believe the future of talent pipelining is. But the good news is we call it future, but actually it's here and now. So thank you. That's me.
Thank you, Steve. That was great. So I'd like now to hand over to Eitan, who's going to look at the evolution of recruitment and future impact of big data, technology, and social media, etc. Eitan.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Scott, and thanks also, Steve, for the excellent piece just before. So 2020 vision, transformation of recruitment. I thought I'd start off with just a quick intro really to what my kind of mindset is, not only in life but also to an extent in the way in which I recruit as well. So it's a reasonably well-known artist from days gone by, and it's really helped me to stay focused on many occasions to the job at hand. And you may agree or disagree with the quote, but certainly something to think about perhaps as we go through today's presentation, and any takeaways from it as well. And it's really, as you see it on screen, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And this was obviously created many, many moons before recruitment and technology that we have today. But I just thought it was quite fitting for the world that we live and operate in as well. Just moving on to the next screen. So to begin with, 2020 as a vision and to recruitment 20 years ago, admittedly a time a few years before I came into the industry, but certainly had some exposure too. So what were the highlights? We had job adverts in print and media. We had fax machines whining away in thousands of offices, receiving and sending runny ink on handwritten timesheets. A plethora of recruiters on the latest Cisco desk phones, making phone calls for the best part of 8 hours a day, and a time of high octane manual activity drilled into people to eat, sleep and repeat the same efforts day in, day out. Effectively successful 360 recruiters killing, catching and eating their way to commission that often doubled and even trebled their basic salaries. Whilst a lot of recruiters were sort of somewhat shackled to their desks, many making cold calls from endless lead sheets and tracking their runners every Monday morning, the smarter ones were out there building their networks in person. So this could be through site visits, meeting key decision makers for coffee, lunch, and often in their stomping grounds, ensuring that they were getting the information that would give them the edge on the next requirement, or perhaps the chance to get the right and best candidate a little bit quicker than the competition. That really was the differentiator back then. Information wasn't necessarily as available to you as freely as it is today, and you really had to earn that information, whether it was small snippets or large project sort of heads up that were coming your way. Looking ahead to where recruitment is today, so in contrast, a mere 20 years on, we live in a very, very different world. Smartphones in everyone's pocket and not necessarily just the top biller. Tablets and not laptops. Wi-Fi connectivity on every street corner, or at least every coffee shop, which is incidentally has become the recruiter's second home and office. And of course, social media. That has really, really changed a huge amount in the last few years. People that you do know, people that you don't know, couldn't have known previously are all there, somewhere out there on the web. Not all necessarily with their hands up wanting to be found or engaged, but they are there nonetheless, and the art of persuasion has moved into a new era, convincing people that they may never actually meet or speak to you, only other than through typed text, going from one current job to a new one. So as much professionally as socially, we are all too busy to interact in the way that we used to 10, 15, 20 years ago, ultimately that being in person for anyone on the call older than 25. The word of the past 20 years in recruitment is pivotal, and Steve alluded to it in his presentation. Automation, the process, the way in which we engage and interact, the way in which we understand what we need. So much of it through automation nowadays. Granted, human input of course still exists, but is dwindling rapidly and making a difference to key decisions being made. Everyone wants more information, but from less sources, faster, and sometimes before they actually, or at least they think they need it. The next slide is just a quick indicator of the ATS Market Share, which is applicant tracking systems. And I thought this one was an interesting one to throw in there really, because there are lots of names in there that some of you may be familiar with, and a few players that are really kind of coming to the forefront of the ATS market. Now, this obviously is indicative of how things have been within the last couple of years. And the Taleo section, which is obviously the dominant section, may be a little bit misleading, but that's obviously due to the kind of collaboration that they have with Oracle. So there's going to be a huge percentage win there for them. But yeah, I just wanted to sort of throw that in there, that technology is really playing a huge part in everything that we're doing in recruitment at the moment. In terms of the presentation itself, what I didn't want to necessarily do was speculate on what the next 20 years would look like in recruitment, partly because I have no idea, if I'm being honest, and partly because the thought of it does actually quite scare me. So I've decided that in the spirit of the 2020 title, my clear vision of what things might look like by 2020 is my speculation that follows in the next few moments. So we've talked about automation, and this is deeply embedded in many organisations across the world in a number of sectors and industries. The rise of the machines, as any Terminator fans out there may have noticed in the past couple of years, is all around us. Artificial intelligence driving robotic process automation fueled by big data is a strapline that I sort of created for this presentation, and I hope resonates with a lot of you on the call. So robotic process automation, referred to as RPA, takes automation such as ATSs and CRMs to another level. In a nutshell, the robots are doing the repetitive manual exercises that will allow people to move up the value chain to focus on things that humans are still better at, such as engagement, induction, interaction, etc. For a little bit longer at least anyway, and I'm sure will be replaced in that sense as well at some point in the future. On to another passion of mine, and some of you on the call may or may not know me reasonably well, but watches are certainly a big part of this presentation, I think, by way of analogy. So my personal vice is a nice luxury watch, and I guess I fall into the left-hand side of this slide as a purist. Mechanical investment rather than the 21st century digital laptop on your wrist, which is on the right-hand side of the screen. The point of this slide, however, is that recruitment is much the same. Purists can still operate in traditional ways, standing strong to their core values, but utilising modern-day tools and techniques versus the digital disruptors of the world who know only the past 5 years or so of methodology and application through technology, delivery outputs through digital programming, you might want to say. Both, however, really have the opportunity to be equally as effective, in my opinion, and we all need to be clear as to what will work best for each of us and what ultimately might be to our detriment. Again, personally, I believe that recruitment remains an art, and technology is perhaps the renaissance of that in terms of what we're going through at the moment. The next slide. So when asked to speak today, there were many potential topics and areas within recruitment and talent that I could have spoken about, and easily beyond 30 minutes or so that we have today. However, drawing upon recent experiences and areas of interest, I've chosen to display and bring together the following in the diagram that you see in front of you at the moment. So D&I, being diversity and inclusion, is certainly one of the biggest drivers of numerous activities and strategies in pretty much any organisation nowadays, and certainly all of them that I've worked in for the past 4 or 5 years. The key is finding a balance between hot air lip service and genuine intention to deliver a difference from the top down. This is critical to call out, I think, at this stage. The bottom of the pyramid, I think, is doing fine, and we are building upon a solid foundation that is diverse and inclusive. But as you work your way up to the top, and this is still where it is a bit murky in terms of the world, some of the faces are cloning and grooming their successors for a future world that is no different to that of the old. The reality demographically is an ageing and analogue workforce who are reaching the end of their careers on the cusp of a very different environment than what they have been used to for the majority of their careers. Organisations need to find a way of best utilising and optimising this incredibly valuable part of the workforce during a period of transition, roughly 20 years, as one generation closes the analogue doors and the digital workforce know no different to the handover and legacy bestowed upon them from their employment grandparents and parents to a degree. However, with this comes some serious expectation management and change management to ensure a smooth and seamless transition that doesn't see productivity fall off the cliff for the workforce as they get to grips with how things will be done forevermore and never again, all at the same time. In recruitment terms, this means that ability to assess talent in the most appropriate and relevant way is absolutely paramount. So to reach some conclusions, recruitment has always been pretty simple in principle, but complicated only by those involved in the process. Recruitment recruiters, in my opinion, are not dying or going through an apocalypse. They simply need to continually adapt to contemporary needs, and optimise progressive resources available to them to ensure successful delivery of value to candidates and to clients. I believe it's a fascinating time in recruitment, and we should be embracing it and certainly not frightened of it. I hope that successfully concludes my presentation for today, and I believe we're going to be welcoming any questions in the next 5 to 10 minutes. Thank you very much.
Aiton, thank you. So I'm just going to change the presenter back to me, and so that you've got on my screen, you should be able to see the contact details for both Steve and Aitan if you'd like to ask them any questions afterwards directly. So a few questions come in. Okay, first one, Steve. What, in terms of, you know, magnetic, attracting a pipeline, attracting fans, you know, building a pipeline from fans, can you talk us through kind of, you mentioned one example, but you know, a real life example of where you've been able to put that into practice?
Yeah, so I mean, a project I worked on last year, which kind of, I suppose, in a way, was kind of highlighting the fans idea, because it was an extraordinary company to kind of do it for. I was doing a project on behalf of a content marketing agency called Velocity Partners, who are not well known. People on the call won't recognise who they are, but they do some brilliant work for companies like Xerox and Salesforce and Sprinkler, and it tends to be kind of quite dry SaaS products that they do content marketing for, and they wanted to go, and they came to me last year with the proposition that they wanted to grow by a double, really, over the course of the coming 2 years, and wanted to make sure that they had the talent in place to be able to succeed at both the growth and fulfill it when they got there. And so we went through a program of understanding, one, what's so awesome about the organization, so we can understand kind of why people would want to join the company. But it also became quite apparent, as I was also asking questions externally to potential candidates in the marketplace, that they would say to me, oh, you mean Doug's company? And Doug, being the CEO or co-founder of the organization, it turned out that he was more of a draw to people than the agency was itself. And what became quite apparent was that people wanted to work with Doug. People were fans of Doug Kessler, rather more so than fans of the agency alone. And that was interesting. That meant that and so as a consequence of that, I started to put Doug at the forefront of the kind of content that we put out there about the stance, the voice, and the work that Velocity do. And we pandered on the fact that people were drawn in by Doug, and his profile in the industry was such that we were able to leverage that and his voice and his opinion to be able to drive like-minded individuals, because technically an organization the size of Velocity, i.e. a relatively SME-sized company, if they believe in what Doug believes in, and the way that he goes about doing his work, the chances are they're pretty much going to enjoy working here. But vice versa, Doug wanted people who were like them as well. So that was so we went through that exercise, one of putting content out there that focused on the individuals and the organization who had something interesting and important to say about the industry in which they served and the work they did. They talked about the challenges and it was never about, hey, look, here's a job, we're trying to hire a job. It was about trying to identify, it was trying to add value to the marketplace of fellow professionals, and with a little footnote at the bottom say, hey, look, we're growing. If you believe in what Doug believes in, the chances are you're probably going to enjoy working here. So, hey, get in touch if you do. And that aligned with trying to understand the people who are already following the company through their social feeds, through their LinkedIn page, who was interacting with Doug already, and a couple of other leaders in the organization. We started to identify more of a finite amount of people that were already further down the attraction funnel. They were already in that closer, warmer zone. These are people who cared about what Velocity did. And so that became our primary exercise, is to identify with those people and communicate with those people because they had interest. That one blog from one blog, we hired 4 people, or 4 people have now been hired, just from a piece of writing about the voice and the way in which they do work. But all those people, they didn't apply to a job ad. They didn't go through the traditional process that we're always used to. They applied to the company based on the voice and opinion of one of its leaders. And because they believed in the same things that leader believed in, and they were passionate, had the same passions as that person. And so when you respond to those people, when you make a call to somebody as a recruitment person, you make a call to somebody you can see is already engaging in your business, and this is what was happening, the response on the other end of the phone or the other end of the email, depending on the approach, is kind of like, hell yeah, I mean, yeah, absolutely, I want to work for your company. And that moment is, oh, that's a dream for recruitment people, other than all that kind of like, oh, please come and work for us because we can do this and we can do that for you, and your expectation being low on the call or approach. The reverse happened. We were dealing with people who obviously had the right skill set, of course, goes without saying. But the second point, they were genuinely people who cared and interacted with the company on a day-to-day basis or responded to the content we produced. And that changed the dynamic of the way recruitment did for them, because of the size of the organization means they don't have a formal recruitment process. They don't have an HR person. They don't have, so they needed to be able to streamline and minimize the kind of work they did, and it worked brilliantly for them. With a company that would never have thought that they had fans, and I think that's commonly the question. I think even Jacob mentions it in a little question on the thing around it. Does companies really have fans? Well, I believe they do. They always have fans.
Steve, I've got a question for you. So when does someone become a candidate, or is everyone who has any interaction with our business a candidate in our eyes, and then becomes an applicant once they start a specific recruitment process? Does this make fans super applicants?
Yeah, well, no, they don't. No, I'm gonna. Fans, I believe, is a secondary layer to all of this. It's a tough discussion, this, as to when a fan becomes an applicant and that. But I think it's a tough thing. I believe it starts as being identifiable talent that people that are really interested in, that would add value to our organisation or potential interest in our organisation. So the top of the funnel to me is just that very broad phrase that not everybody likes that much, called talent. I think that is talent. I think as they start, in my opinion, I think, I don't know whether Adam would agree with me this, I think Adam talks about this differently. I believe then they become a candidate when they start to show interest in our content that relates to the fact that that shows signals that they may want to come work for our organisation or may apply for something. Then they become a candidate. I don't like the phrase applicant massively. I think it's because it only seems to apply to people who say, you've got a job, I'd like to apply for that job. I believe a candidate is anybody who's showed engagement in our business and is in the eye line for our hiring activity. So I think there's a little late. Now, fanhood, as I made the point in the presentation, I think it's another layer. It's another layer. Those people at the top of the funnel can be fans, and absolutely the people at the bottom of the funnel should by now be fans. But the point is, we can't. Fanhood, I think, still exists at the top end of the tunnel, because these are people who still think we're an awesome business and still think we're engaged with that top of funnel content, who love our insights, who believe in our people, who think we're a fantastic organization, but just don't particularly want another job right now, or they're a leader of another organization, or they're already and we can't think that fans have to be candidates. I think we also have to think about fans being influencers and advocates of our business. Who knows? Maybe in 2 years' time, maybe they will become a candidate, an applicant, an employee. But I think fanhood is something that runs alongside that funnel, technically, but effectively is a symbol of each part of that funnel, of people being kind of closer to our business. I believe for more fans we create, the more people drop into the bottom end of the funnel, more appropriate people. That's my opinion.
Yeah, we've got a couple of questions that are related as well. So the first one is, what technology exists to track a fan's journey? And then, what would you say in the future it's necessary for recruiters to have a bit of a digital sort of technical background to leverage the new tools and attract new talents?
Yeah, well, obviously, here we are sitting on a Candidate ID podcast webinar. The technology, I have not seen. I mentioned I'm a tech cynic because most technology doesn't aid this process. It merely either supports it or adds layers to it to make it kind of difficult to understand the true ROI and benefit from it. Obviously, I've now become associated with Candidate ID because it does the thing that I wanted to do at Velocity last year. I wanted to be able to work out more efficiently who were the people who were closer down the bottom end of the funnel. And so we now have the opportunity to identify through different touch points on something like Candidate ID that people are reading more intensely job-related parts of our company content. And what I mean by that is web pages, LinkedIn pages, hiring manager pages, careers pages, job profile. We were lucky to have a tool like Candidate ID that can now do that process for us and automate and trigger those tipping points that I talked about at the point when people move from being somebody who is an interesting individual to us to being somebody who is an interesting individual to us who actually is also interested in our organization, potentially hire ready. So that's the technology that it exists if people explore this technology a little bit more. But the layer after that you just mentioned is very, very crucial. Because what use is great technology and innovation if people can't take advantage of it because they don't have the capacity or resource to do so? This, to me, comes back to the stem of this challenge, or the stem of the future of recruitment, is that our recruitment teams need to look different the way they used to. It should be less about outbound calling, and more around identity. We need more digitally ready people. We need people who understand how content marketing works. Every recruitment team, I sat with somebody yesterday we talked about this, a company with like 9 or 10 recruiters in their team who all do recruitment. They all fill requisitions. That's what they do. But there was nobody in there who supports it, who supports the organization with marketing, content, the inbound attraction process. Everybody's doing outbound attraction, and they think their inbound attraction is the response they get from job boards. But that's hundreds and hundreds of people, thousands in fact, and that's not quality recruitment. So you need to have this new layer of recruitment team expertise that looks at who is interacting, because we can now, like Aitan said as well, we have data, we have knowledge available to us. It means that we can be much more intuitive about who and why.
Okay, I've got a question for Aitan. If you're an organization that is that is using either third party, either an agency or an RPO, how do you see that that relationship changing as we move forward into 2020?
Yeah, so I think the relationship will continue to exist. As I think I alluded to in the presentation, I'm forever reading articles and statements on LinkedIn and blogs about the death of recruitment or the death of the recruiter. I don't think that's the case at all. It really is a sort of continued evolution of a professional that adapts to their environment and their circumstances. So with regards to RPOs or suppliers, either on site or engaging with their clients remotely, the simple fact remains that technology and social media is allowing clients to engage and interact with potential candidates, applicants, fans more directly. However, that's only the case if that client or in-house function has the capability to do so. And that ultimately is where the RPO or the recruiter will remain the specialist in identifying, engaging, assessing the appropriate talent to provide to their respective clients. So I don't think a huge amount will change in the next sort of 2, 3, 5 years in the basic core principles of what the recruitment industry provides. it's just a case of that continued evolution of how they do it. So, you know, as I say, I've been in the industry for 10, 11 years, and there are reasonably significant progressions with, you know, job boards, LinkedIn, Facebook, etc. But fundamentally, what I do day to day and how I do it hasn't really changed from, you know, the first couple of months in the industry. I would prefer to sort of see technology as an enabler, rather than, you know, a replacement to a person or an individual providing that service. And much to my colleague Steve's kind of technophobia, I think, you know, he's right in sort of calling out the fact that there's no way around technology. It's there in our faces, in our pockets, in our bags all day, every day. Those that will succeed will utilise that technology to the best of their advantage.
Excellent. Well, guys, we are we're out of time, and I'd like to thank you both, Steve and Eitan, and everybody who joined us this afternoon for 2020 Vision, the Transformation of Recruitment. We will share the on-demand version as soon as we have it ready. Thanks again, guys. Have a great rest of the day.
Pleasure. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you. Cheers then.
Cheers, everybody.
Bye. Bye.